Frigate 0.16 beta is out, has been out for about a month or so now, maybe a bit longer, and I installed it a couple of weeks ago to see what was there. Lots of new features, including facial recognition built in, as well as license plate recognition, and if you're into birds, you can recognize some birds as well. So I'll show you what's new, show you some examples of my setup, and then see where we go from there. So let's get started. All right, so those of you that are new around here, let's talk about what Frigate actually is. Frigate is an NVR, open source NVR, and it's built around now real-time AI object detection. It's all locally processed on your own hardware. That means that your camera feeds never leave your home unless you want remote access to them. You can also do something with Frigate Plus, which allows you custom models. Now, I've started playing with Frigate Plus and started feeding them data, but I haven't actually used one of the models yet. And I'm considering that because I think it'll be a better detection mechanism with the models that they're building. Anyway, if you want to learn more about Frigate Plus, you can jump into plus.frigate.com, and that will take you to the website about it. This particular NVR is privacy focused, and it's focused on home automation folks, including myself. I run it on a little Optiplex device in a Docker container. So you can also use the AI to check your video feeds. And with one single TPU, as I mentioned, you can run 100 plus object detections per second. Doesn't mean you can run 100 cameras, but you can run 100 plus object detections per second, set up zones, integrate with Home Assistant and other platforms for notifications, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really full-featured NVR solution. I've been running it for a long time now, and I went from Blue Iris to this and haven't looked back. All right, so let's talk about what's coming out in the beta version of Frigate, version 16.0. First of all, we always want to talk about the breaking changes. Always make sure you copy your config file and make a backup of that config file. And let me just show you here. If you go to your Frigate directory, you'll have a Frigate DB file, and you'll have also a config file. And you want to make sure that you backup of both of those files into another location. That way, if you have any problems, you can revert back to what it was before. If you want to upgrade your Frigate instance, I'm assuming that most of you that are running Frigate in a Docker container or something like that will understand how to do this automatically, but I've had questions about it. All I'm doing is changing the image name to Frigate 0.16-beta 2. And then I stop Frigate, and since I'm running Docker Compose, I bring Docker Compose up. Oh, by the way, let me just talk about this too. I was running a command called docker-compose, and without going into too much detail about it, that has been deprecated. There's no such thing now as docker-compose. If you upgrade Docker, you're going to have problems with that. So the simple solution is to, instead of the hyphen, you do docker compose up-d, and this will download the new version. If you do the -d, it'll daemonize it. I mean, again, this is all probably not news to you that you run Docker all the time. And it will go in there and look at the compose file. And I can't do it unless I am running a sudo command. It's already running. So if you didn't have it running, and you would stop it and restart it, it would download the new version. So some breaking changes. Make sure, again, you've made backup copies. The go-to RTC handling has been updated to accept any audio codec instead of only AAC. It used to be only AAC. So now you can get audio from cameras that use a different format. If you're recording FFmpeg preset is using this, it will likely need to be changed to audio AAC. I was always running that because my cameras are AAC cameras, so I didn't have to change it. But if you're doing something else, you may need to change this as well. And here's an example they give you. Object detection is now disabled by default. If you are running a configuration that has it enabled, it will automatically update that with enabled true. That is a configuration setting that has to be turned on in your configuration file itself. And then Frigate will no longer fall back to look for an FFmpeg binary in the path. If you're extending Frigate or you're using a custom FFmpeg binary, you need to specify that. There's more details in the FFmpeg build guide. Home Assistant add-on users need to be aware of several important breaking changes. We'll talk about that in a minute. The base change for Frigate has been updated to Debian Bookworm. Okay, we're just keeping up to date with the world. The camera group icon pack has been updated so that if you're using icons, you may need to reselect those icons. This gets into some more detailed stuff. The Halio driver and firmware has been updated to 120.1. The standard Docker image now provides Halo support. So if you're using Home Assistant, version 1 or version 15.0 of Home Assistant or version 15.0 is required. Other users will need to update the Halo driver firmware on their system using the script. There is a script that will go out there and make these changes for you. So if you're using a driver or using the Halo driver, you need to run this script on your installation so it updates it to the latest version. The ROC-M mini graphics detector has been removed. Additional parameter has been added to the movement weights for auto tracking users. Config migrator will add the new value so Frigate starts, but if this fails or using relative zooming, you need to make sure you remove auto weights from your config and recalibrate those. Proxy header mapping for user roles is now required. And then the string ftime format config option is now deprecated and will be removed in a future version. The UI will define formats based on your language and your locale automatically. And then some API routes are now protected and require credentials. There's a whole new auth section for this version of Frigate. All right, so let's talk about Home Assistant add-on users. I am not doing that, but I am running a Docker container. But if you are using Home Assistant, this applies to you. The Frigate config directory for add-on users was changed from the Home Assistant config directory to the add-on config directory. That means the config file and database are now part of the add-on backup taken by Home Assistant. You no longer need to back up them manually. Only backups after 0.16 will benefit from this change. If you took a backup of 0.15 when updating to this newest beta version, the Frigate config file and database will not be part of it. So make sure you're backing up those manually. After you've upgraded to 0.16, then that change has been made and any of the future backups will contain all of the information you need for your backup. When you first start Frigate on Home Assistant, when you upgrade to 0.16, all the files will be moved from the Home Assistant config directory to the add-on directory, which we just mentioned. That means these files will no longer be accessible through your Home Assistant config directory. They are in the /add-on configs directory, which you can get to through the VS Code or add-on terminal add-ons through Home Assistant. In that new directory, the config file will be named config.yml rather than Frigate YML. That aligns with the normal configuration file format and naming conventions that are used elsewhere, including on like my Docker. You can copy config YAML from the add-ons config back to Frigate YML if you want to move back to 0.15. You just have to rename it. Consider copying back other files as well, like the custom model, custom FFmpeg, and all of that stuff. The database from 0.16 is not compatible with 0.15. That is why you need to make sure you make a backup before you upgrade this. To restore it, you must restore it from the manual backup. And then finally, in Home Assistant, the add-on configs directory contains the config directories of all add-ons. You can move files from one add-on config directory to another, from Frigate Beta to stable or vice versa. Make sure you do that before uninstalling the add-on unless you do not select the also permanently delete this add-on's data when uninstalling it. So the point is, just be careful on Home Assistant that you realize that you're going to be in a different directory structure under 0.16, but that does not apply until after you upgrade. So continue to make manual backups on previous versions until you're on the 0.16. That way you have a backup to go to in case something happens on the 0.16. All right, let's get into new features. All right, this version of Frigate contains facial recognition. It uses that to apply sublabels to known faces. Recognized faces can be included in built-in notifications and integrated into third-party notifications. Frigate Plus is not required to use the facial recognition. However, if you use a Frigate Plus model or a custom model that detects face natively, it enhances the efficiency by eliminating the need for separate face detection per person. Again, I haven't used the Frigate Plus model yet, but I am leaning more and more towards that. It's a nominal fee per year. To do that, you don't have to do it. And what I've done so far hasn't used the model, but my results are iffy on what I'm currently running. So I'm curious to see if the Frigate Plus model will actually work better for me. The accuracy of face recognition heavily depends on the quality of the images used for training. It is highly recommended to follow the training guide to achieve the best results. And then there's face recognition documentation for more. Also in this release is license plate recognition. Frigate detects and recognizes license plates, saving recognized plates to tracked car objects. Known license plates can be assigned custom labels, so you can actually say that if this license plate is AB12345, that's Bob's car. Frigate Plus is not required for license plate recognition. However, using a Frigate Plus model, or again a custom model that detects license plate natively, improves efficiency and eliminates the need for a separate detection model. This version of Frigate 0.16 introduces a new role called the viewer role. Basically, it restricts access to system features, the configuration editor, and the Frigate HTTP API. So the viewers can look at live view, review, and explore, but they can't do other things to mess up your configuration. Also, each user can mark items as reviewed independently. So if you have 3 users and you mark all of the stuff reviewed and another user hasn't seen stuff yet, that doesn't affect what they do in terms of their review set or their review page. They can actually mark it independently so that one user's action doesn't hide the review items from the others. And you can look at that under the settings here under users. You can add different users for different roles. So in this case, my role is a admin, and this other test user role is a viewer. So I'll just change that to viewer. All right, so this is admin me, and this person's a viewer. If I wanted to change them to an admin, I guess I would change them and now make that test user an admin. But I want to keep them as a viewer, so I'll just leave them as a viewer here. So I have two roles. If this person logs in and starts, or if I log in and start reviewing all my videos and marking them as reviewed, this person will not be affected by the review settings or the reviews that I've already made. More fine-grained permissions like denying access to specific cameras and other things like that will come in a future version. So this viewer role is just starting and it'll give you an option to do a lot of things later on. Proxies can also now map user roles. That's a whole nother story, a whole nother configuration setting. And then you can dynamically disable and enable cameras using buttons in the UI. You can do it through MQTT, and you can use the camera turn on, turn off services in the Home Assistant integration. Live stream selection. So Frigate now allows configuring multiple streams per camera. So if I go into my configuration editor, you can see here that I've defined 2 streams. I've defined a main stream and a substream, and those 2 streams are then available to be viewed on the camera page. So looking at the camera itself, I go to the camera page and click over here on this particular UI, and this is also available through the UI or through the mobile, any UI really. I can choose a main stream and I can choose a substream, and this gives me the ability to view one or the other on here. So that's an option you have now for defining both any number of streams really for a camera. If you're using camera groups, which are these things on the dashboard where you can set up different groups to view different groups of cameras, there's now a new dialog. If you click on the edit button down here, you now have options on this group page to do specific things for your cameras. So each camera can have its own streaming method. So if I want smart streaming or continuous streaming or no streaming, I can set it on that camera. And it'll set it based on the camera. So if I set the front porch to no streaming, actually let's do continuous streaming on that one. And it gives you a warning about high bandwidth. Save that one, save it. Now when this particular camera will always display live streaming, and this one's set currently to smart streaming. So this one only updates or shows anything when there's activity there. So if you look at this one's set to smart streaming. I could set it to no streaming, and it won't do anything at all, which is kind of pointless. But I guess if you refresh the screen, you'll have the latest image on this one, and this one will always be live streaming. So many things here. So we have a lot of UI changes. The review timeline has been rewritten to be more performant. It supports zooming using pinch to zoom on mobile and Control+ scroll wheel on the desktop. So if I look at the review timeline, let me take this camera here, and I look at the review timeline, which is this history. If I hold down the control key now, and I move my mouse wheel, now it's zooming in and zooming out. So this, as they say, it's more performant. So it actually scrolls through here quicker or reloads that little section a lot quicker. So plot object paths and the object lifecycle pane. This is a neat one for me. You can actually look at this object lifecycle and you can see here all of the different steps that were created when this person went into this zone. So you have here, they entered the zone right here, and then it tracked them all the way through here and back around again. And then they left the zone right here. And you can actually click here and see when that particular bounding box entered that zone. And then you can come to the next spot and see where that bounding box exited the zone. So you have the ability to see how the camera saw that object moving through that zone. Add the ability to create object masks from bounding boxes in the object lifecycle pane by right-clicking. So right-clicking here, create an object mask. So that's I guess that's the mask it creates. Automatically brings you to the object mask window. You can do all your settings here. So if you're having something that continually, like a plant, continually alerts, and you want to create a bounding box for that, you can actually do that right here and then do whatever you want with it. So really kind of neat, easier way to do things with that UI. So add an underline for each day that recordings are available in the history. So if you go to a history page on a camera and you click this, every day there's an underline, there's something available. And these that are red, I haven't reviewed yet. So if I click on the 22nd, that means there's something there to review. And I'd have to scroll through this timeline over here to find it. Add Frigate Plus pane to settings to show model information and allow selection of new model from the UI. So if I go over to the settings page and I look at Frigate Plus, you have to enable Frigate Plus, which means you need to go get an API key and everything. You can do it for free unless you want to use a model. So if I click on Frigate Plus, the Frigate API key is detected and validated. The snapshot configuration is set up here. Now, I don't have any models. If I had models and things, if I was a subscriber, paid subscriber to Frigate Plus, I would probably have some model information here as well. Add a ability to draw a rectangle on the debug view to obtain an area and size ratio. So if I went back to a camera, debug camera, and I wanted to debug the front porch, object shape filter drawing. So I click on that and then I can click this. How big is that? That area is 4,589 pixels. It has a ratio of 0.81. If you're trying to eliminate an area or mask an area or figure out how big an object was when it was detected or it's sitting there being detected, you can use this information here to kind of refine that. So that's helpful to be able to draw that on there. And then we have the ability to edit sublabels directly in the tracked object details pane. So I can edit this. So if I want to say that was Bob, that is a person, but it's Bob. There we have Bob in our saved tracked object sublabel. That's the stuff in parentheses. All right, so ensure the mute unmute state is persisted for the HLS player. That's fine. And add camera selection to the history view. So on the history view, it used to be all cameras by default. Now you can actually disable some of the cameras that you don't want to see through that whole history thing. And so now you have this camera plus that one. So you have two cameras that are kind of grouped together. So this history, and that way you don't see all that other stuff that you don't necessarily need to be seeing on this particular view. So a lot of UI changes to this. A lot of work's been done to make that easier to use for you. In the zones and object area, the ability to estimate the speed of objects passing through zones and set a speed threshold to trigger. If I want to add a new zone, I can call it front speed zone. I don't know, speed zone. And then I can set the speed estimation on here. Speed estimation has been disabled for zones. Zones are speed exactly 4 points. So I actually have to create the zone first. So I'm just going to create a random zone here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gives me 4 zones, 4 points. You can see here 4 points. And then you can do a speed estimation. So anything going through there, line A distance, line B, you have to kind of fill out this distance and then the speed threshold in kilometers per hour, then if something is in that zone going that speed, that's the minimum speed it must be for it to be considered in that zone. Anyway, that's speed estimation that you can set alerts on and other stuff there. We talked about bird classification. You can actually classify birds if you're into that. I haven't seen anything in my backyard or front that shows any kind of birds. There is a model for birds that shows all of these different kinds of birds that you can actually classify with your camera if it actually sees it. All right, that was a lot of this new features. There's so much in this release. I do want to spend a moment just talking about the facial recognition stuff. So if you go into this tab right here, you now have the ability to see some of the facial recognition stuff that is coming through my cameras. And you can, this is the train tab. It always defaults now to the train tab as of version beta 2. There's always a train tab here, even if there's nothing in it. So face recognition identifies known individuals with matching faces with previously learned facial data. When a known person is recognized, their name was added as a sub-label. So if you look at this page here, here I am coming out the front door, and here's the sub-label we talked about earlier. And it's got an 80% match for me. This was my facial detection that showed my face being detected. Now, see, these two don't have any detection. It just depends on how well the camera sees a face. And also how well things are trained. So that's the sub-labels they're talking about. When we talked about the Frigate Plus model and not required, but when you're running a default Coco model or another model that does not include face as a detectable label, it runs via the CV2 using a lightweight DNN model that runs on the CPU. You should not define face in your list of objects to track because it's automatically doing that. So there's two models that you can do with face recognition. You can do, if you go to settings and you do the classification page, you can do the face recognition, either the small or the large model. So the small model employs a FaceNet face embedding model. It runs efficiently on most CPUs. If you use a large model or the large model, it employs ArcFace embedding and will automatically run on the GPU if you have a GPU. So if you want fast and more efficient, run the small model. If you want more accurate, you're going to need to run the large model, but your hardware needs to support that. So just keep that in mind. In both cases, a lightweight face landmark detection model is also used to align faces before running recognition. Again, all this runs locally. For minimum system requirements for a small model, it runs on the CPU. Most CPUs should run efficiently. A large model is optimized for accuracy, and an integrated or discrete GPU is required. You can read all about that in the documentation. You must enable face recognition. If you go into this UI and you click on this, it will automatically update your config file with that particular enabled true option. And there's some detection thresholds and minimum areas you can set to fine tune those parameters. And you may need to play around with that to make that work. And there's some other recognition settings as well. And then in order to use it, you do these things. And I'll get into this stuff in more detail in another video because this one's getting really long. There's a lot of tips here on the documentation on how to make your model work the best for you and make sure that the training is working like it's supposed to. When I look at the training model here, you'll see that I have a lot of kind of blurry stuff, squish stuff. I don't really look like that in real life. It's so sad. But you can see a lot of squished faces, a lot of blurry faces, and it's classifying them wrong here. Obviously, those are all wrong. I would remove these anyway. And then it sees me here. And you can click on these to actually see the picture. So it sees my face here and it picks that out, zooms in, crops it, etc., and picks just the face part of that and shows me what it is here. I'm still playing with this. It's a lot to learn about how this training works. You want to start with some very good face on, like you're looking at me right now. You want this, straight on face. You don't want sideways faces and everything else. However, my cameras are mostly sideways looking when I'm walking around. So I'm going to have to play around with that and see how that works. So far, it's iffy on the built-in model, the small model. If I run the bigger model, I'll see how that works. And if I run the Frigate Plus model, which requires paying for if you're going to use the model, not if you are submitting stuff to them. It's free to sign up for it, but if you want to use the models, you have to pay for them. I'll see how that works all together, and I'll update you later on. There's a lot to this new release of Frigate, and a lot to go through on that. So if you're interested in using this this new version, in terms of just what it does normally, which is just camera detections, alerts, things that I use every day and have used in all my Frigate versions in the past, it works just fine. These new features, I'm still playing around with them, still trying to learn them. And with that, I'm going to end the video here. It's way too long already. Let me know if you have any questions, and stay tuned for some more detailed work on the actual facial recognition pieces and what I've done to kind of tune cameras to make them work better for me. With that, we will see you on the next video, and thank you so much for watching.